Welcome to the All About Technology podcast. My name is Jeff Burrell. I'm your host. And today we are talking about tech solutions. This is part 2 in the series. And joining me today is Ethan Goodsell, who is the Senior Network Engineer for CatchMark. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you, Jeff.
And Erich Baum, who is the Vice President for Mobile Defenders. Welcome, Erich.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. So what we're going to focus on today is talking about a project that we worked on last year with Mobile Defenders. They're one of our customers in the Grand Rapids area, and we're just going to talk about that project, what CatchMark's role was, and get some feedback from Erich on, how it was working with the CatchMark crew and where they kind of leveraged our skills to help them get into their new facility.
Great.
So, little background. It was February 2021 when CatchMark first started doing tech support for Mobile Defenders. At that point, we weren't aware of any possibility of moving to a new building, and we're supporting your infrastructure as is. Couple different buildings, right? All in the same area.
Yeah, we grew into multiple different buildings. So it got to a point where it was difficult for us to operate. And that's when we started looking at alternatives to get everything under one roof and started the conversation with you and CatchMark.
Okay. So for the listeners, give them a little background of what Mobile Defenders does. I think that'd be good for them to hear.
Mobile Defenders is a distributor of mobile technology product. So entered the space as a repair parts provider, primarily for the iPhone. When you break your iPhone, you go into a repair store, and we provided those parts to fix your device and get you back operating again.
Gotcha. And how long has Mobile Defenders been around in business?
It's established in 2013. We're pretty small at that point, and then have progressively grown from there.
Okay. So we were providing the tech support. We started talking about the new building with you. Take us through kind of those early discussions and, some of the stuff that you were looking for from CatchMark and how they were helpful.
Yeah, I don't think it was too far after we initially established the relationship. It wasn't even a year when we started looking at, we need a new building. What are we going to do? And I think we sat in our conference room and threw some drawings down on the table and looked at it and said, what can you guys do to help support us with that? A lot of questions back and forth, just in terms of, mostly you guys asking me and the group at Mobile Defenders, what do you hope to get out of the space? What are you looking to do in it? How's it going to operate and function? It was a several-month process where we were kind of picking through and choosing, how do we operate? What's the scale? Did we want to do it just as small as what was needed for current state, or were we going to prepare a little bit for the future? And so there was some guidance from the CatchMark standpoint in terms of, hey, here's how you set yourself up to grow into that space as well.
And you guys may have changed your mind a couple times over those few months, right?
Maybe.
Right.
Once or twice or 10.
Yeah. So I look back through my notes. It was around August of 21 that we started talking about the new building. And then it was April of 22 before the CatchMark stuff started. Obviously, you guys started with the construction of the building before that. But that was quite a lengthy process. I remember delays on steel and all kinds of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, we broke ground. It was the fall of 21. Steel was an issue for everybody, and so we ran into some challenges there. I think you guys were able to get into the building probably 3 months after what we had initially targeted as a time frame. So there had to be some flexibility on really everybody's part to get that to happen and adjust some schedules and long lead times with everything, really.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the peak of when we were struggling to get switches, network gear, everything in too, which was kind of unheard of. We always been able to get stuff within a day or two, and then all of a sudden the inventory everywhere decreased.
Yeah, especially with the Mobile Defenders project, we spent almost 2.5 months waiting for this primary switching stacks and all the equipment to come in for their stuff, and um, some of it towards the tail end, we didn't even get some of the cameras or some of the additional components until the very end of the project.
Yeah, well, I can remember. Jeff, I need you to try and find me 2 of these. If I can't find them, do that for me. I got other stuff to do.
Yeah, and then the very last part of the project was the sound masking, actually. Mobile Defenders was fully moved in, fully up and operational, had been for 2 or 3 months. And we actually had their procurement team give us a hand to finally get the last 2 amplifiers. We had the audio processor, everything was installed. We just could not find anybody who had the amps.
Yeah, that was a challenge.
Yeah, it was just crazy. Especially for us because it, like I said, it was always, oh yeah, we need this. We just order it. It's here in a couple days. But so I know the building itself isn't totally occupied by you guys. You have other suites in there, but
Correct.
how big of a space, square footage wise, is Mobile Defenders occupying?
Well, the whole building is 90,000 square feet. Mobile Defenders, and then sister company Eduparts, which was just split off from Mobile Defenders, is operating in about 35,000 square feet of that space.
So for Ethan, I know you absolutely love this project. Talk a little bit about what went into it from your side. What were we doing for Mobile Defenders here in this new building?
So for their new building, this was pretty much a complete portfolio of our services. The only thing that we didn't do on this one was access control. We did the core network, all the structured cabling, wireless, the full switching stack, a new firewall stack, all of the individual terminations to all the desks. We did a lot of fiber work for it, and then we did the surveillance system for it as well as system documentation, configuration. We spun up a new server, a new storage array, so this was a completely new system built from the ground up specifically for their use case.
And then the sound masking, which you mentioned already, some of the conference room equipment, AV stuff, we helped with some of that, if I recall.
Yep. We helped in whatever capacity they needed. We started with the fundamentals on how many people are you going to start with, what spaces are you going to start with, and then we started working the design from there and actually settled on more of a modular design where we had primary switching rack in a rather unique server room within the office space. And then we've got 2 distribution racks, one on the Mobile Defenders warehouse side and one on the Eduparts warehouse side. So whatever they decide to do in the future, it would drastically reduce the cost to be able to add things to the system. We left capacity to add extra switching, extra runs, extra battery backup should it be needed, to be able to serve additional cameras, access points, workstations, whatever they may need now and in the future.
And that was a key part from the Mobile Defender side is this is where we are, but if we continue to grow, we have to be ready to take more space in this building and make that fairly easy, right?
Yeah, it's got to be expandable. That was a big priority for us, and I think it was successful in that regard.
Right.
We've already seen some changes to our business since we moved in, which hasn't even been a year yet.
Right.
And so it was set up in a way that we can easily transition into what's coming next for Mobile Defenders too, even in the current footprint.
Right. Yeah, and that's good forward thinking to think about, prepare for that, because you, like we said, you guys have had a tremendous amount of growth, and to move into a building like that and think you're not going to continue to do that and then have to basically start all over again, not a deal.
Not something that we were excited about the prospects of, and we don't have anybody in house that is has this level of expertise. So really, completely reliant on CatchMark and the team to make recommendations and say, no, you may think you want to go in this direction, but here's why it's a bad idea, and kind of talk through that. So as much time as we spent planning, and the months that we're involved in that and going back, and as you mentioned, we may have changed our mind a few times along the way and how we wanted it to operate and function. I think it was beneficial, when we moved in from day one.
So I think one of the things that separates CatchMark from some of our competitors is our ability to do all of this. You've got a lot of companies out there that can provide day-to-day tech support. And then you've got the companies that they could do this solution work. But our ability to do both, we really take pride and value in. And I have to assume that it made it a little bit easier and I guess less worries on your side dealing with one vendor, knowing that, well, whatever CatchMark, the plan they come up with here, they got to support it. They're going to support it. And if they're on board, it should be good going forward.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. I know from my perspective, as we were, going through the construction process and had a lot of great people that were involved in that process, there was a huge benefit to CatchMark knowing, understanding, and having, even if there was a short history, less than a year, still understanding, how we operated and functioned day to day, and then from the infrastructure standpoint, building something that would support that. We were still operating our business in the old footprint before we moved down. We didn't or moved over. We didn't shut down for even a day as we transitioned over, and didn't miss a beat from that perspective, from a functionality standpoint.
Well, do you have any examples of things that, you talk about the trust piece. So less than a year working with CatchMark, it's not like we had been supporting you for 10 years, right? So less than a year in, you're kind of relying on us to make all these decisions. What type of things did you see from us that basically allowed you to trust us and get, be a key partner in this?
Yeah, I probably drove Ethan a little crazy sometimes with some of the questions that I would ask as we were going, but I think it's something that, was built over time, and, knowing Ethan prior to CatchMark certainly helped with that. So knew that he had our best interest in mind and wanted us to be successful, but then also seeing evidence of, hey, I didn't think about this, and I think it might be a problem. Can we adjust and pivot and react? And it's like, oh, no, we've already got it covered. Here's what we're doing. This is the plan. And so from a confidence standpoint, that was, there right all along.
Good. So. Obviously what I wanted to hear. So that's good. We really do strive to over deliver. Ethan, when you first got involved with the planning and all of this, I'm sure your eyes lit up because you love big challenges and had all the confidence in the world that we could be successful and do this. What were some of the concerns that you had, or some of the points that you maybe were not fully sure in, and how do you handle those?
So with mobile defenders, I was pretty confident in the initial design. We built some of the modular system in right out of the starting gate. The unique challenge presented later on in the construction process, we actually had to change an entire cabinet's worth of runs, so almost 130 runs into the cabinets over in edgy parts due to an engineering change on the mobile defender space. So where we had planned to run cables, we had a construction schedule get mixed up, and they actually closed in a wall with concrete before we could run anything in it. And then probably the most unique challenge of mobile defenders is we actually built their network backwards. So the warehouse section was done quite a bit before the office section was done. And with the primary distribution system, the internet connection, main servers, main rack, firewall being in the office space, and the office space not done, but they needed to be running in the warehouse space, we actually built everything out of the MD distribution rack to run directly from there so they could move over, as Eric alluded to, with not even being down a whole day. They moved their whole warehouse and got it back up and running, and then the office moved a while later when the space was actually finished. So we built everything in different stages. That's a very non-traditional way to do things.
Yeah, flexibility very key, right?
Well, very key.
So as far as scope of this project, like roughly, I mean, any idea? Do you remember how many drops or any estimate of how much cable or, I mean, just to let everybody, all probably 5 people that watch this, have an idea of how big of a project this really was?
So in the office space, there's 86 runs approximately on the MD office space. The EduParts office space has about 50 now. We've added to it since it was even built, and changed some engineering later on because the cubicle layout over there changed. Their warehouse side has, I believe, 80 some odd drops running into their distribution rack. And then the mobile defenders side has almost 186. There's probably close to 65 to 70,000 feet of Cat 6A in that building right now. I think we've got about 1,100 feet of fiber running in between the racks into the main distribution rack.
Yeah, pretty massive project. So, Eric, as we were going through and working and getting closer to, finalizing things, share with everybody, how that communication with CatchMark went, and did we do a good job, communicating back, staying on schedule, that type of stuff.
Yeah, especially as we got closer, there was, more and more frequent communication. I mean, our goal for moving in, and I keep talking about it, but was zero impact to our customer. We didn't change our operating hours, which was, we're operating 6 days a week. We were able to not miss a single order. And really, I think that came through communication, especially when we were ready to pull the trigger. We didn't even have to use our contingency day on Sunday. We did it after our shipping cutoff on a Saturday. And I think Ethan and I were on the phone a couple different times. Are we ready for this? And we actually had some live cutovers that we had to do from, outside of just the infrastructure. It's also the IT services that, came into play there too. So it really, and from my perspective, huge benefit to Ethan knowing about the infrastructure,
Yeah.
the services, being able to, CatchMark just talked internally and then said didn't miss a beat. So we would literally, take one station down in the old building, bring it back up in the new building.
And when you talk about not missing shipments, like you guys, you ship a little bit more than maybe 5 or 6 boxes a day, right?
A little bit more, a few more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. What about, there had to be some kind of struggle somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the biggest struggle from the whole project was just some of the lead time items that, we ended up hitting it. There were a few things that weren't critical, like the sound masking system, that we were able to wait a little bit longer. We didn't have that in the old building, so it was something that we didn't really know what we were missing.
mm-hmm.
But to me, that was the biggest struggle. Some of it was just didn't know, and so it's some of the uncertainty. But I think starting the planning process and having it nailed down, really as the ground was being broken, was a huge benefit to some of the longer lead time items.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, we have a lot. We obviously, the more advanced notice we get for projects, the better we can prepare and more successful we can be. It's often, hey, we're doing this. Can you come out tomorrow? Right? I mean, Ethan gets that often. So, I mean, from your point of view, that planning and getting involved, or Mobile Defenders getting CatchMark involved early on in the process, definitely helped us be successful, right?
Oh, most certainly. With just the sheer scale of Mobile Defenders building, if we hadn't gotten ahead of it that far in advance and at least had a framework of a design that was approved with an approved budget, at that point, we never would have hit any of the goals. That being able to adjust any of the construction timelines is one thing, but if you don't have your base plan in place, the engineering, and this is what we're doing, this is the equipment we're using, these are some of the lead times we're looking at, there was no possibility of getting anything done on time or any usable amount of scheduling in there.
Yeah, and I was a part of helping get the communication of the quotes over and talking with Eric in some of those meetings. And the part that I would say that was really nice is we do our best to give as accurate of an estimate as possible. But I mean, even small jobs, it's hard just to predict how much time that's going to take, let alone for a project this big. We gave you guys, hey, we think the networking is going to be this. If we're going to go over, we'll let you know. And your willingness to trust us there and like Ethan said, get that stuff approved and back allowed us to get going on finding the hardware and getting stuff in house as fast as we can. So we were ready to go. In addition to meeting with the Mobile Defenders team, there were a bunch of meetings with the CatchMark team as well, right? Like we'd sit down with you guys, we'd come back, kind of plan out what needed to be done, adjust the quotes or the inventory or the items that we need, and then just try and be ready for when you guys called and said, okay, you guys can start Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely that back and forth, and I think from a quote perspective, a little bit of learning, especially from my end, where it's like, whoa, this is capturing what? Like, what is this quote for? And even a few back and forth, like what? Okay, this is like the high end. What's it really going to be? And it really, I think having the relationship established with a level of trust that, hey, this is gonna work like it needs to, was important because it came in under budget, even with some of the changes and adjustments that had to be made because of construction changes and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
But I think early on, the first pass through, it's like, whoa, we're not going to really have to spend this to make
Yeah.
this happen, are we?
And I think Ethan can speak to it's common with some of the tech stuff that we do. Like people don't realize really what goes into doing this and doing it the right way. Correct, Ethan?
Yeah, absolutely. There is, I have at least 2 or 3 meetings a week just over sticker shock. There's no way that system actually costs that much. Well,
Let's do it the
yeah.
easy, cheap way.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But we still want it to work.
And when you get to a certain scale, there's no easy or cheap way anymore. I mean, Mobile Defenders is a shining example of that. You guys got so big, so fast, just the capacity you needed on the networking side to ensure that you had your business continuity. You weren't missing orders. You could get things out quickly and efficiently. Everything ran fast for the office, the warehouse, the print system alone. You guys moved past what we could do something easy and cheap with, and really moved into the enterprise world, which, as most people would imagine, the enterprise world is quite a step up cost-wise.
For sure. So, how long you guys have been fully in the new building now?
We moved in of June
June.
of
Okay.
2022. So
Okay.
coming up on a year.
All right. So, to date, how's the technology working?
I don't know that I really want to talk about it.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, never mind. Ethan's like, shut up, Jeff.
Yeah. No, it's been good, and I'm trying to think of any real network problems that we've had. We've had a few things with some of our tenant spacing. They needed some support, and so was able to call CatchMark and say, hey, some of our tenants are running into some problems. Do you guys mind if I share contact information? And that ended up going well and getting into their space as well.
Yeah, that was some of the forward thinking and planning, right? Like some of the pieces that were put in place for future expansions for Mobile Defenders were able to be leveraged now to help the other tenant out, right?
Yeah. First, I don't want to skip over the fact that Eric had to think real hard there if there was any issues. So that is a real good indicator in my book that he had to think about that. But as far as their tenant issues, due to the modularity that we designed into the racks and the fiber distribution system the building already had, we actually ended up running a 700-foot run of fiber up to towards the front of the building in their tenant space. To be able to feed a U.S. signal connection directly out of their host rack in Mobile Defender's office, and get it up over there, so they didn't have to wait 6 months to bring their building online. Had we not done that engineering up front, we wouldn't have been able to have less than a week turnaround for their tenant, and that would have put their tenant in a real rough spot.
Yeah, that seems to be a very common challenge, is getting that main connection into a building. We had a bunch of talks with US Signal when you guys were trying to get your connection live too. That stuff just takes time.
Yeah, everybody said, I mean, I think maybe it was that very first discussion that we had in August, like, plan it now.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I mean, how long can it take? And we did start planning it, and even then it was, like, sweating down to the wire, like, within the week of us moving in.
That's right, it was.
Yeah, I actually had to make a note of that one. We had that connection online and functioning 3 days before moving, and we'd wanted that in a minimum of 2 weeks so we could load test everything, make sure that everything was working and up to snuff just to bring their warehouse online. And Eric and I remember we were sitting in the front of the building just, all right, is it going to work? First try, it didn't work, and then we got an actual US Signal tech out and got it sorted out, and all right, now it works, now we can start breathing again.
Meeting at the front door, and he was ready to leave, like, let's do a test. And
Yeah. When I'm pretty sure Eric sent an email out at one time where it was like, hey, is anybody, you got a connection at US Signal that maybe we could, get an in to get this done faster? And it just, some of that stuff, it just takes time, and there's nothing we could do. Like, it didn't matter how ready we were, how ready Mobile Defenders were. If US Signal doesn't bring that there, we're not doing anything.
The irony is half the time it's not the ISP's fault. Even when they got to run a new line in, a lot of it's city permitting too.
Oh, yeah.
And as we can all imagine, who've had to deal with permits, it can take a phenomenal amount of time for something simple. And them having to do aerial work on the side of a main road there didn't do us any favors. So that came right in. And then one more piece of the project actually came to mind is having to stand in the front of the building to be able to get any signal. Mobile Defenders is one of the largest scale cell booster systems we've put in recently as well under CatchMark, which has made living in the office quite a bit more easy.
Yeah, I actually forgot about that until you brought it up. I would, sprint out the door so I could, take a phone call, right inside my office. We wouldn't get any signal. So it's probably good that I forgot about it, because I don't do that anymore. I tried to press my face up against the edge of the window and see if that was outside enough, and until that repeater was put in, it was not.
Is there any chance we can look back at camera footage somehow and maybe see Eric doing that? Because that'd be great.
I don't think we'll catch that, but there's probably still some history somewhere where you can see Jordan running in and out of his office to try to take phone calls, because Jordan had the corner office with his own dedicated door there, and I personally know exactly how much that man is on the phone, so I know it was driving him nuts.
Yep.
Yeah, he got a chair out there.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't always think that that's going to be a problem. I mean, it's not like your building's out in the middle of nowhere, right? And but a big metal building and
With
cell phone
larger metal roof and
Yep.
metal trusses, basically they put themselves in a Faraday cage of,
Yep.
well, everybody's phones work 10 feet outside the building, but doesn't matter what carrier you have. You walk inside the building and your call goes away. And no LTE, no 5G, no nothing.
So explain a little bit what that solution looks like.
Well, it depends on the manufacturer for them. For Mobile Defenders, we used one of the latest generation WeBoost units, and it basically consists of a real high gain antenna that sits above the roof line outside the building. We bring that down into the amplifier in a centrally placed location, and then we chain a couple of interior antennas to it. And basically what it does is it's a two-way amplifier. It amplifies incoming signal and amplifies outgoing signal. So basically the external antenna receives the local cell carrier frequencies, amplifies them, and dumps them inside the building. And then when a phone goes to actually use it, it amplifies the outgoing signal as well. And depending on the setup, you can have between 1 and 4 internal antennas. At Mobile Defenders, we started with 1, and we left enough headroom in the system that if we needed to put a second one closer to the edgy part side, we could. In their case, we actually got really lucky of the signal penetration in building actually went far enough over into the edgy part space where we got away with just one antenna for the system.
And that's not like carrier specific. You put something like that up and it works with all the carriers, correct?
Some of them are carrier specific. This specific unit is carrier agnostic. It
Okay.
works with T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, just about all the frequencies. And the bonus on this one is it supports 5G as well. So it's got the latest and greatest tech in it. It's one of those things that you configure it, you set the levels for the building, and you walk away from it and don't touch it. And we have a battery backed as well, so even if the power goes out, the cell booster will continue to function nicely.
So why this solution instead of just utilizing wireless calling?
Well, first and foremost, not every device has wireless or Wi-Fi calling.
Okay.
Secondly, there are some message services that still require the phone to have some semblance of a signal, even if you have Wi-Fi to function. A lot of people will see multimedia message or a text message fail just because they have no signal at all.
Gotcha.
And just as an overall, a cell phone operates better if it has signal. It's more of a natural flow because usually it'll take a minute to switch either between cell or Wi-Fi calling. It's not a perfected system as of yet, in my opinion.
Okay. That makes sense. So that's been real helpful then.
Yeah, game changer. And really weren't able to function well without that. So we didn't know really till we got into the building.
Right. I was going to say you could look at that as, okay, well, CatchMark missed on identifying that up front, but just because it's a metal building doesn't mean that every place has to have that, right? There's a lot of factors.
No, it's not a guarantee at all. Some of it depends on location, some's on construction, and some of it is dependent on the contents of the building. Like if you take a machine shop, for example, with a bunch of high electrical power machines, they generate interference on their own. So something like a CNC shop is going to be miserable from the word go. And then Mobile Defenders just got unlucky because they're kind of in between coverage spaces where they're at, and then you added the metal building skeleton to that, and it kind of just stacked against them as a whole.
Gotcha. Well, before we wrap up, anything else you want to talk about with us today?
And I think the whole experience was great for us, which managing that project, managing the day-to-day business, and being able to have a partner like CatchMark come in and take some ownership or responsibility for a huge piece of what allows us to operate day in and day out was just tremendous benefit to myself and then the company. So just happy to talk about what a great job CatchMark has done for us in all facets, and so glad to be able to go through some of that here today, and thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We appreciate that, Eric.
Ethan, last question for you then is, as you design an environment like this and execute this, knowing that the support is going to be handled by CatchMark, by the team you're a part of and work with, that really, I'd have to assume, makes it a little bit easier on you as well, right?
Oh, it absolutely does, because as we write the maps and the documentation and everything that goes into the engineering of a system, I had the opportunity to train the team on the new system as we went through the actual construction phase of it, and I had a number of internal meetings just on the functionality of it, of okay, troubleshooting-wise, if they got a problem with wireless, here's how it's zoned, here's where the wire groups go, here's what's wired to what, down to here's where the cubicles are wired to, everything's marked, these are the new servers, these are the new storage arrays, and this is the overall design theory of how we're going with this building. So being able to train our team internally before they even started supporting it, it makes for a pretty seamless transition when I sign off on the job being done and them taking over support. I think that's a huge advantage.
And I talk to customers quite often about that, where if you're using one vendor, CatchMark, to do all of this, you eliminate that finger pointing, right? Well, in this situation, if we're supporting it, well, this isn't our problem. It's a problem with the install. Okay, great. That's still CatchMark. So we still fix it. And it's a lot easier to work that stuff internally than trying to get maybe another vendor to admit that maybe they're wrong or troubleshoot that. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
See, all that was happening on the back end. I'm sure there's stuff that took place that we didn't know about because when when we came in, plugged in, it worked.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what we want to do, right? Like, we're going to solve those problems, and it may look all calm, cool, and collective to you, but on the back end, Ethan's sweating it out, and the rest of the guys too. But well, thank you guys. This was a really great project for CatchMark to work on. We learned a lot. We appreciate the opportunity, not only to work with you on that, but to provide you guys support. We appreciate the other businesses that you've referred over to us. We try to help as many people as we can, and a lot of that is word of mouth. So thank you for that. That wraps up this episode. Check out our YouTube channel for more episodes. Ethan Goodsell, thank you.
Absolutely.
Erich Baum, thank you.
And we'll leave Mobile Defenders with a shout out as parts and accessories suppliers. If you've got a small scale or even a large scale repair business and you need some excellent quality parts, accessories, anything that goes into the mobile space, make sure you reach out to them and they'll be able to help you very well.
thanks.
Nicely done. I'm Jeff Burrell, your host. Until next time, have a good day.